Okay, let's go ahead and get started. We're a few minutes late. Is my mic working? Okay, my mic is working. All right, good, 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 good. Okay, bear with me a minute here. I am just going to clean my glasses because this book is actually a hard copy book. So I'm going to need a little aid. Good. Okay, cool. All right, here we go. So we are going to be starting on the Hiram Key by Christopher Knight and Robert Lomas. What does that say? Pharaohs, Freemasons, and the Discovery of the Secret Scrolls of Jesus. So both of these guys are Masons, and they decided they wanted to write about the history of Freemasonry. And they have a whole series of books that I will eventually get through. This is the first one in the series. And they've written related stuff separately. But I think they wrote like 4 or 5 books together. All right. Get to my intro here. The intro is only like a page and a half, so no worries there. All right, introduction. Henry Ford once declared that all history is bunk. It may have sounded a little abrupt, but when it comes to the facts of the past, which most Westerners are taught in school, it turns out that Mr. Ford was right. Our starting point was a private piece of research to find the origins of Freemasonry, the world's largest society that today has almost 5 million male members in regular lodges and has in the past included many great men amongst its number, from Mozart to Henry Ford. As Freemasons, our goal was to try to understand a little about the meaning of Masonic ritual, those strange secret ceremonies carried out by mainly middle-class, middle-aged men from Huddersfield to Houston. At the center of Masonic lore is a character called Hiram Abief, who, according to a story told to every Freemason, was murdered almost 3,000 years ago at the building of King Solomon's Temple. This man is a total enigma. His role as the builder of King Solomon's Temple and the circumstances of his horrible death are clearly described in Masonic history, yet he is not mentioned in the Old Testament. For 4 of the 6 years we spent working on this research, we believed that Hiram Abief was a symbolic creation, but then he materialized out of the mists of time to prove himself very real indeed. Once Hiram Abief emerged from the distant past, he provided nothing less than a new key to Western history. The intellectual contortions and labored conclusions that have previously formed Western society's collective view of the past give way to simple and logical order. Our researches led us first to reconstructing the ancient Egyptian king-making ritual of 4,000 years ago, that in turn led us to uncover an assassination that took place around 1570 BC, which gave rise to a resurrection ceremony that is the direct antecedent of modern Freemasonry. As we tracked the development of this secret ritual from Thebes to Jerusalem, we uncovered its role in the building of the Hebrew nation and in the evolution of Jewish theology. In startling contrast to what is currently held to be fact, the Western world actually developed according to a very ancient philosophy encoded in a secret system that has come to the surface at 3 key moments over the past 3,000 years. The final proof of our findings may well turn out to be the archaeological find of the century. We have located the secret scrolls of Jesus and his followers. And that's the whole introduction. And I was just going to say, what year did this come out? So this was first published in 1996. Just for reference. So if you disagree with something they say, or they have said something in a later book that contradicts it, this was in 96, 31 years ago. So, all right, chapter 1. And we'll see, I'll get through chapter 1 and we'll see if I feel up to reading a second chapter. The Lost Secrets of Freemasonry. It starts with a very long quote, I think. Yeah, 2 very long quotes. So, both of them are from the Daily Telegraph. The first one is from 1871, Daily Telegraph, London. And it says, quote, that Freemasonry dates from before the flood, that it is a mere creation of yesterday, that it is only an excuse for conviviality, that it is a soul-destroying atheistic organization, that it is a charitable association doing good under a silly pretense of secrecy, that it is a political engine of extraordinary potency, that it has no secrets, that its disciples possess in secret the grandest knowledge vouchsafed to humanity, that they celebrate their mysterious rites under the auspices and the invocations of Mephistopheles, that their proceedings are perfectly innocent, not to say supremely stupid, that they commit all the murders which are not traced to somebody else, and that they exist only for the purpose of promoting universal brotherhood and benevolence. These are some of the allegations made by babblers outside the circle of the free and accepted brethren. Omne ignotum pro magnifico. The less one knows, the more one takes of Freemasonry. So that was the 1871. And very much in the 1870s style, that was basically one sentence with a whole lot of semicolons. Now, the second is from the Daily Telegraph, London, 1995. Masonry puts considerable stress on encouraging high standards of morality among its members, but it is hardly surprising that a society which uses secret handshakes, signs, and language for the mutual recognition of its members is suspected of being an influence for bad rather than good. Why have such methods if not to hide the truth? Why hide if there is nothing to hide? Those outside Masonry find the whole idea of dressing up, reciting esoteric texts, and performing strange rituals so silly that they tend to believe there must be some other and probably more sinister attraction to it. Probably there isn't, but a negative is always hard to prove. End quote. Okay. Sheer pointlessness. In 1871, Queen Victoria had 30 years of rule still in front of her. Ulysses S. Grant was President of the United States of America, and Freemasonry was the subject of public speculation. 125 years later, the first moon landing is a generation in the past. The world is switching on to the internet, and Freemasonry is still the subject of public speculation. We came across the first of these quotations on a neatly cut out and folded scrap of newspaper in a dusty volume on Masonic history, where it had been placed as a bookmark by some long-dead Freemason. Chris read the second mid-Atlantic between lunch and the feature film. Almost everything, including writing styles, has changed over the last century and a quarter, but the general public's attitude to Freemasonry today is just as confused as it was in the 19th century. Most people do not trust what they do not understand, and if they perceive an elitism that excludes them, mistrust will quickly turn into dislike or even hatred. Whilst Freemasonry has always been open to all men over the age of 21 years, 18 under the Scottish Constitution, of sound mind and body, who can demonstrate good character and express a belief in God, there is no doubt that membership in the British Isles was in the past centered around the aristocracy, with the rank and file coming from the upper strata of the middle classes. Oh, and we're in an ad. Sunny Beach already started an ad. That was quick. Oh, we got somebody came in. I didn't see you come in. I was reading. Sorry. Okay, the ad should be ending here in just a second, and then I'll. Okay, so somebody came in. Um, Waka Flocka Fool, and I was just reading. They put all kinds of stuff in chat, starting right off with "I'm so hammered." Um, the Freemasons are awesome as fuck, but literally don't care about their secret. Okay, whatever, dude. Enjoy being hammered. I'm gonna keep reading. All right, so I wasn't very far into it, and when the damn ad started. Okay, I'm going to back up a couple of sentences here because I'm not sure exactly. Well, I'll just start here. Almost everything, including writing styles, has changed over the last century and a quarter, but the general public's attitude to Freemasonry today is just as confused as it was in the 19th century. Most people do not trust what they do not understand, and if they perceive an elitism that excludes them, mistrust will quickly turn into dislike or even hatred. Whilst Freemasonry has always been open to all men over the age of 21 years, 18 under the Scottish Constitution, of sound-minded body who can demonstrate good character and express a belief in God, there is no doubt that membership in the British Isles was in the past centered around the aristocracy, with the rank and file coming from the upper strata of the middle classes. In the mid-Victorian period, it was socially important, almost essential, for a professional man to be a Freemason. The nouveau riches of the Industrial Revolution sought social status through membership of an exclusive society that had a high profile amongst aristocrats and of all levels, right up to the royal family itself. In theory, at least, members of the working classes were equally eligible to become Masons, but in practice it would hardly enter their heads to ask to join their boss's club. So the lodge has long been associated with the well-to-do. Those at all levels of society who were not Freemasons could only speculate about the secrets revealed to members of their mysterious organization. They were known to wear aprons and large collars and rumored to roll up their trousers and exchange strange handshakes while whispering passwords to each other. In the second half of the 20th century, Freemasonry is a far less elitist organization, as men from all levels of society have sought and gained membership. However, a glance at the top of the English Masonic hierarchy quickly illustrates that being a member of the royal family or an hereditary peer is still hardly a major handicap to promotion prospects. Most people in the Western world are at least vaguely aware of Freemasonry, and its mysteries tantalize two large groups: those who are not Masons, who wonder what the secrets of the order are, and those who are Masons, who also wonder what those secrets are. A compelling reason for silence amongst Masons is not so much a compulsion to adhere to their sacred vows or a fear of macabre retribution from their fellows. It is more that they do not understand a word of the ceremonies they participate in, and their only fear is that people would laugh at the apparently pointless and silly rituals they perform. Freemasonry for us, and every other brother we know, is little more than a social club providing an opportunity to indulge in some amateur theatricals, followed by a meal and plenty of beer and wine. The complex and obscure ritual has to be memorized through years of chanted repetition. An emphasis is put on sincerity of delivery, but in reality only small parts of the ceremony can be understood as simple allegorical messages concerning uprightness of moral character. The rest is a strange mixture of meaningless words and reenactments of supposed historical events surrounding the building of King Solomon's Temple in Jerusalem some 3,000 years ago. Whilst we in insiders are getting on with doing very little except learning oddball verses by rote, many on the outside are trying to destroy the organization because they suspect it of causing corruption, seeing it as a bastion of capitalist privilege or a club for mutual backscratching. Countless books on the subject have fed the curiosity and antagonism of the general public. Some, such as those written by American author John J. Robinson, have been superbly researched. Others, such as those from the late Stephen Knight, have been little more than fiction to satisfy the worst fears of the anti-Masonic sector. The anti-Masonic lobby is constantly at work to prove supposed misdeeds, and we have had first-hand experience of this. A born-again Christian friend of Chris's recently stated that he was taking up a counseling role within his church group. Upon inquiring whom he was intending to counsel, I was horrified to hear the reply, quote, "Those suffering from Masonic curses," end quote. "What is a Masonic curse?" I asked, without telling him of my connection with the craft, as Freemasonry is called by insiders. Quote, "Masons have to swear allegiance to one another at the expense of all others, even their families. If they fail, they have curses brought down on them which create terrible suffering to them and those around them," end quote. I was momentarily lost for words. Freemasonry is many things, but it is certainly not evil, although some people seem determined to find it so. In direct repudiation of such ill-informed accusations, the United Grand Lodge of England publicly states that, quote, "a Freemason's duty as a citizen must always prevail over any obligation to other Freemasons," end quote, and that, quote, "Freemasonry should not be allowed to harm a man's family or other connections by taking too much of his time or his money or causing him to act in any other way against their interest," end quote. We have no wish to be apologists for Freemasonry, but it does do a lot of good and, as far as we know, nothing bad. It has always donated very large sums of money to charity, usually anonymously, and it promotes levels of moral rectitude and social responsibility that are impressive and have set the standards that others follow. Color, race, creed, or politics have always been irrelevant to membership, and its two driving goals are a social order based on freedom of the individual and the pursuit of all knowledge. The only absolute requirement is a belief in God, any God. Our biggest criticism of Freemasonry is its sheer politeness. Our biggest criticism of Freemasonry is its sheer pointlessness. It does not know where it came from. No one seems to know what it is trying to achieve, and increasingly it seems improbable that it can have much of a future in a world that demands a clarity of purpose and benefit. Not only are the origins of Freemasonry no longer known, but the true secrets of the order are admitted to have been lost, with substituted secrets being used in their place in Masonic ceremony until such time as they are rediscovered, quote unquote. If the words that emerge from the ritual are taken at face value, Freemasonry would have to be at least 3,000 years old. It is not only opponents of the order who dismiss this. The United Grand Lodge of England itself does not claim such antiquity. Wary of public derision, it avoids any official views on the origins of the craft and allows so-called lodges of research to debate the limited historical evidence that exists. A poor candidate in a state of darkness. When we were made Freemasons, we both underwent the process experienced by every initiate to the craft for at least 250 years. As part of these ceremonies, we were asked to swear as men of honor that we would not divulge any of the secrets of Freemasonry to the outside world, and we are very aware that the information we give here may be considered by some Masons a betrayal of those secrets. However, the United Grand Lodge of England considers only the means of recognition to be the protected secrets of the order, and no one could falsely pass themselves off as a Freemason after reading this book. It is necessary to explain the rituals in considerable detail as they form the basis for all of our research. Some of the words given are secret identification devices, but we do not point out which words should be used in which circumstances, so we have done our very best to meet the spirit of our vows. In any event, we gave our agreement to maintaining these secrets on the understanding that they would not interfere with our freedom or, as moral, civil, or religious agents, and where our vows to prevent us sharing such important discoveries as we have now made, they would have most certainly interfered with those freedoms. Although we joined different lodges several years apart, we recall identical experiences. This is how it felt. We have used I to stand for both of us. Having been interviewed by a panel of past masters several months before, I was now ready to be made a Freemason. What I was joining was virtually unknown to me. The only firm question that had been put to me was, "Do you believe in God?" I did, and everything proceeded from there to the point where I was now standing, with a guard who was banging with the hilt of a drawn sword on the large door to the temple, seeking permission for me to enter. I was hoodwinked, that is, blindfolded, and dressed in loose-fitting white trousers and top. One foot was in a simple slipper, the expression for which is slipshod. My left leg was exposed to the knee, and the left breast of the tunic had been drawn aside so that my chest was bared on that side. Unbeknown to me, a hangman's noose had been put around my neck and draped down my back. I had been relieved of all metal objects, and I was now ready to be led into the temple. We later learned that this mode of dress, the rough smock with the running noose around the neck, was exactly how a medieval heretic would have been treated by the Inquisition prior to making this confession. His confession. I recall how I sensed a large number of people present and felt very vulnerable. I felt a cold point press on the skin of my chest. "Do you feel anything?" the voice in front asked. A whisper in my ear gave the formalized reply, which I repeated out loud. "I do." "Then let this be a sting to your conscience as well as instant death, should you ever betray any of the secrets now about to be imparted to you." Another voice from the other side of the room then spoke. I recognized it as belonging to the worshipful master. "As no man can be made a Mason unless he be free and of mature age, I now demand of you, are you a free man and of the full age of 21 years? "I am." Having answered that question so satisfactorily, there are others which I shall immediately proceed to put to you, which I trust you will answer with equal candor. Do you seriously declare on your honor that, unbiased by the improper solicitations of friends against your own inclinations, uninfluenced by mercenary or any other unworthy motive, you freely and voluntarily offer yourself as a candidate for the mysteries and privileges of Freemasonry? Do you further seriously declare on your honor that you are prompted to solicit these privileges from a favorable opinion preconceived of our order, a general desire for knowledge, and a sincere wish to render yourself more extensively serviceable to your fellow creatures?" "I do." The dagger that had been held firmly to my chest was removed, although I did not know it at the time, but the noose, called a cable tow, remained about my neck. The man to my right whispered to me to kneel, and a short prayer was said, invoking the blessing of the Supreme Governor of the universe, God described in a neutral way, so that he is equally accessible to members of any monotheistic religion. The ceremony proceeded with my helper guiding me around the perimeter of the temple, pausing 3 times to introduce me as a poor candidate in a state of darkness. Although I could not see it, the center of the temple floor was laid out with a central rectangle of black and white squares. On the eastern edge was the worshipful master's pedestal. In the south sat the junior warden, and in the west the senior warden, both at lesser pedestals. After my 3 laps, I was brought, still blindfolded, to the worshipful master's pedestal, where he asked, "Having been in a state of darkness, what is the predominant wish of your heart?" Once again the answer was whispered in my ear, "Light." Then let that blessing be restored. The blindfold was removed from behind, and as my eyes adjusted, I could see that I was in front of the worshipful master, who immediately drew my attention to the emblematic lights of Freemasonry, which were explained as being the volume of the sacred law for Christian candidates, this is the Bible, and the square and the compasses. He then told me that I had now attained the rank of entered apprentice Freemason, the first of 3 degrees through which I would have to pass before being accepted as a full Master Mason. The secret signs, grips, and password of the first degree were then explained to me, and I was told that the left-hand pillar that stood in the porchway of King Solomon's temple has special significance to Freemasons. Both the left-hand and right-hand pillars are recreated in the lodge and stand behind and to either side of the worshipful master. The left-hand pillar, called Boaz, was named for Boaz, the great-grandfather of David, king of Israel. After various perambulations around the temple, I was presented with a simple white calfskin apron which symbolized the rank I had just obtained. Then I was told, it is, quote, "It is more ancient than the golden fleece or Roman eagle, more honorable than the star, garter, or any other order now in existence, it being the badge of innocence and the bond of friendship." End quote. This section proved to be a particularly revealing part of Masonic ritual, as we show later. It contains clear evidence of being constructed at 3 very different periods of history, from the genuinely ancient to the relatively modern. Throughout the course of the ceremony, various moral and social virtues were recommended to me, using a number of architectural analogies. Amongst them, Freemasons' tools were likened to methods of self-improvement. Towards the end of the ceremony of initiation, I was alarmed to learn that there are test questions which must be committed to memory in order to progress to the next degree, that of fellow craft Freemason. Among these questions and answers are some pieces of information that were more intriguing than informing. Question: what is Freemasonry? Answer: a peculiar system of morality veiled in allegory and illustrated by symbols. Question: what are the 3 grand principles upon which Freemasonry is founded? Answer: brotherly love, relief, and truth. To any candidate, the first of these principles sounds reasonable, but the next 2 are a little hard to fathom. Relief from what? Which truth? Now a fully accepted brother, albeit a mere entered apprentice, I left the temple feeling that something special had happened, but I did not have a clue as to what any of it might mean. The festive meal followed, and as the man of the hour, I was placed at the left hand of the worshipful master. Toasts and speeches rolled out, and a good time was had by all. The mysteries of the craft certainly had not been revealed. Perhaps, I thought, all will become clear at the next ceremony. It did not. The hidden mysteries of nature and science. Some months later, I passed through a 2nd degree ceremony to attain the rank of a fellow craft Freemason. This time I entered the temple with the rest of the brethren, wearing the plain white calfskin apron that was the symbol of my genuine innocence and my very humble status. The lodge was then opened in the 1st degree, and as the candidate for elevation, I was put to the test by answering the questions that were explained to me at the end of the previous ceremony. As soon as I had struggled through this examination of my ability to recite gibberish, I was told to leave the temple temporarily to be properly prepared for the passing ceremony. I was readmitted wearing the same rough clothing used at my initiation ceremony, now with left leg and right breast laid bare. As the deacons conducted me around the temple, new passwords and signs were revealed, including a hand-raised posture that claims to have originated when, quote, Joshua fought the battles of the Lord in the valley of Jehoshaphat, and prayed that the sun be stayed in its course until the overthrow of his enemies had been completed, end quote. This later proved to be highly significant. The right-hand pillar from the porchway of King Solomon's temple was described to complement the information given in the previous degree regarding the left-hand pillar. This pillar, identified as Hakin, is the J supposed to be an H? It's Jachin. Is it supposed to be pronounced as like an H? I don't know. This pillar, identified as Hakin, was said to be named after the high priest who assisted at the dedication of this section of the temple at Jerusalem. The twin pillars, Boaz and Hakin, were to become massively important at all points of our future research. The first is said to represent strength, or in it is strength. That's how it's written. It's in quotations. Strength, or in it is strength. The second, to establish, and when united, stability. After the completion of the second degree ceremony, I was permitted to extend my researches into the hidden mysteries of nature and science. Once again, this ceremony was followed by eating, drinking, speeches, and singing. A glimmer of light. Some months later, as a fellow craft wearing a white apron with 2 blue rosettes, I was eligible to be raised to what is often called the sublime degree of a master mason. But first it was necessary to prove my competence once again by learning the answers to more test questions. During the putting and answering of these questions, my attention was drawn to the fact that, quote, our ancient brethren received their wages in the middle chamber of King Solomon's temple without scruple or diffidence, from the great reliance they placed on the integrity of their employer in those days, end quote. Careful study of the Bible had found no mention of any middle chamber to Solomon's temple. Such a factual mistake is unlikely, so to make sense of it, we assumed that the test questions indicated that the brethren had been able to trust their employers in the past, but might not be able to do so now. At this stage, I was also given an apparently biblical reference that does not exist in the Bible, but which points towards the mission with which I would be trusted once I was raised to the sublime degree of a master mason. Quote, for the Lord has said, in strength will I establish my word in this mine house, that it will stand fast forever, end quote. This quotation proved to be extremely important, although it makes no sense to modern Freemasons, and it made no sense to either of us when we first heard it. I was then entrusted with a password which enabled me to re-enter the temple when the proceedings had been opened as a Master Mason's Lodge. Things this time were very different and dramatic. I re-entered the temple to find total darkness save for the lone glimmer of a candle burning in the east in front of the worshipful master. In the very large windowless room, the solitary candle gave precious little illumination, but once my eyes had adjusted, it was possible to make out faces behind it, and just pick out the form of the whole temple in shades of black and dark gray. Dramatically, I was then informed that the subject of this degree was death itself. The ceremony started with a brief resume of the previous degrees. Quote, brethren, every degree of masonry is progressive and cannot be attained but by time, patience, and assiduity. I don't know if I pronounced that right. In the first degree, we are taught the duties we owe to God, to our neighbor, and to ourselves. In the second degree, we are admitted to participate in the mysteries of human science and to trace the goodness and majesty of the Creator by minutely analyzing his works. But the third degree is the cement of the whole. It is calculated to bind men together by mystic points of fellowship. As in a bond of fraternal affection and brotherly love, it points to the darkness of death and to the obscurity of the grave as a forerunner of a more brilliant light which shall follow at the resurrection of the just, when these moral bodies which have been long slumbering in the dust shall be awakened, reunited to their kindred spirit, and clothed with immortality." End quote. A prayer was then said, which included, quote, "We beseech thee to impart thy grace to this thy servant, who seeks to partake with us the mysterious secrets of a master mason, and do him with such fortitude that in the hour of trial he fail not, but passing safely under thy protection through the dark valley of the shadow of death, he may finally rise from the tomb of transgression to shine as the stars forever and ever." End quote. The ceremony proceeded in a manner not too dissimilar to the previous occasions, up to the point where I was obliged to act out a remarkable story which explains the manner in which the true secrets of a master mason came to be lost. I played the role of a character who does not exist outside the rituals of Freemasonry. His name was given as Hiram Key. The worshipful master told the story. Quote, oh, and this is very long. This is a very long quote, page and a half. Quote, "Nature presents one grand and useful lesson more, the knowledge of yourself. She teaches you by contemplation to prepare for the closing hours of your existence, and when by means of such contemplation she has led you through the intricate windings of this your mortal life, she finally teaches you how to die. Such, my dear brother, are the peculiar objects of this, the third degree in Freemasonry. They invite you to reflect upon that awful subject and teach you to feel that, to the just and upright man, death has no terror equal to that of the stain of falsehood and dishonor. Of this grand truth, the annals of Freemasonry afford a glorious example in the unshaken fidelity and untimely death of our Grand Master Hiram Key, who lost his life just before the completion of King Solomon's Temple, at the construction of which, as you are doubtless aware, he was a principal architect. The manner of his death was as follows. 15 fellowcrafts of that peculiar class appointed to preside over the rest, finding that the temple was nearly complete, but that they were not yet in possession of the genuine secrets of a master mason, conspired together to obtain those secrets by any means, even having recourse to violence. On the eve of carrying their conspiracy into execution, 12 of the 15 recanted, but 3 of a more determined and atrocious character than the rest persisted in their impious designs, for which purpose they placed themselves respectively at the south, west, and east gates of the temple, whither our master Hiram Key had retired to pay his adoration to the Most High, as was his wonted custom, it being the hour of high 12. His devotions being ended, he prepared to retire by the south gate, where he was accosted by the first of these ruffians, who, for want of a better weapon, had armed himself with a plumb rule, and in a threatening manner demanded of our master, Hiram Key, the genuine secrets of a master mason, warning him that death would be the consequence of his refusal. But true to his obligation, he replied that those secrets were known to but 3 in the world, and that without the consent of the other 2 he neither could nor would divulge them, but intimated that he had no doubt that patience and perseverance would, in due time, entitle the worthy mason to a participation in them. But as for himself, he would rather suffer death than betray the sacred trust reposed to him. This answer not proving satisfactory, the ruffian aimed a violent blow at our master's forehead, but startled by the firmness of his demeanor, it only glanced down his right temple, yet with sufficient force to cause him to reel and sink to the ground on his left knee. End quote. At this point I felt a very light blow on my temple, and my 2 guides, known as deacons, indicated that I should go down on my knee in imitation of the story. Quote, "Recovering himself from this situation, he rushed to the west gate, where he stood opposed by the second ruffian, to whom he replied as before, yet with undiminished firmness, when the ruffian, who was armed with a level, struck a violent blow on the left temple, which brought him to the ground on his right knee." End quote. Once again I felt a touch on my own temple, and I was pressed down onto my right knee. Quote, finding all chances of escape in both these quarters cut off, our master staggered, faint and bleeding, to the east gate, where the third ruffian was posted, and who, on receiving a similar reply to his insolent demand for our master, remained true to his obligation, even in this most trying moment, struck him a violent blow full in the center of the forehead with a heavy stone maul, which laid him lifeless at his feet. Such was the manner of his death. End quote. In the light of the candle I saw the worshipful master reach forward over his pedestal with an instrument which touched my forehead, and I felt my hands pulling me backwards to the floor. I was held straight, and my feet were kept in place, so that I hinged backwards as I swung into the darkness. As I touched the ground, a funeral shroud was immediately draped around me, so only my upper face was uncovered. The worshipful master continued, quote, Brethren, in the recent ceremony as well as in his present situation, our brother has been made to represent one of the brightest characters in the annals of Freemasonry, namely Hiram Key, who left his life rather than betray the sacred trust reposed in him, and I trust that this will make a lasting impression not only on his but on your minds, should you ever be placed in similar circumstances of trial. Brother Junior Warden, you will now attempt to raise the representative of our master with the grip of an entered apprentice. End quote. The junior warden reached down, took my hand from under the shroud, and pulled. My hand fell through his fingers. Quote, Worshipful master, this grip proves to slip. End quote. Shadowy figures marched around my grave for a few moments, before the worshipful master spoke again. Quote, Brother Senior Warden, you will try the fellowcraft grip. End quote. This proved as ineffectual as the first attempt. Quote, Brother Wardens, you have both failed in your endeavors. There remains yet a third and peculiar method known as the lion's paw or eagle's claw grip, which is given by taking a firm hold on the sinews of the wrist of the right hand with the points of the fingers and raising him on the 5 points of fellowship, of which, with your assistance, I will now make a trial. End quote. The worshipful master gripped my wrist tightly and pulled, hinging me instantly upwards to my feet. Once again unseen hands took my weight. As I reached the vertical position, the worshipful master whispered 2 peculiar words in my ear. I now knew both parts of the Mason's word. At the time it was meaningless, but through our researches we have discovered its ancient and fascinating meaning, as will be shown later. Quote, Thus, my dear brother, we have all Master Masons been raised from a figurative death to a reunion with the companions of their former toil. Let me now beg of you to observe that the light of a Master Mason is but as darkness visible, serving only to express that gloom which hangs over the prospect of futurity. It is that mysterious veil of darkness which the eye of human reason cannot penetrate, unless assisted by that divine light which is from above. Yet even by this glimmering ray you will perceive that you stand on the very brink of the grave into which you have just figuratively descended, and which, when this transitory life shall have passed away, will again receive you into its cold bosom. End quote. As the worshipful master spoke these chilling words, he directed my gaze downwards and to my right, where I could just pick out of the darkness the shape of an open grave, with a human skull on a pair of crossed thigh bones at its head. For the first time in my Masonic ceremony, I felt a cold wave of goosebumps pass across my body. Quote, Let those emblems of mortality which now lie before you lead you to contemplate your inevitable destiny and guide your reflections into that most interesting and useful of all human studies, the knowledge of yourself. Be careful to perform your allotted task while it is yet day. Listen to the voice of nature, which bears witness that even in this perishable frame there resides a vital and immortal principle which inspires a holy confidence that the Lord of life will enable us to trample the King of terrors beneath our feet and lift our eyes. End quote. The worshipful master indicated upwards and to the left toward a glimmer of light in the east, the exact opposite direction to the grave, where I could see the small illuminated shape of a star. Quote, "To that bright morning star whose rising brings peace and tranquility to the faithful and obedient of the human race." End quote. My ceremony of raising caused me to be reborn to the status of a master mason, and concluded with the giving of more passwords and grips and more building analogies to provide guidance on the improvement of my qualities as a mason and a member of society. Later, in another formal lodge meeting, the story of events following the killing were explained. Quote, "There was a general muster of the workmen throughout the different departments, when 3 of the same class of overseers were not to be found. On the same day, the 12 craftsmen who had originally joined in the conspiracy came before the king and made a voluntary confession of all they knew, down to the time of withdrawing themselves from the number of the conspirators. His fears being naturally increased for the safety of his chief artist, he selected 15 trusty fellow crafts, and ordered them to make diligent search after the person of our master, to ascertain if he were yet alive, or had suffered in the attempt to extort from him the secrets of his exalted degree. A stated day having been appointed for their return to Jerusalem, they formed themselves into 3 fellow craft lodges, and departed from the 3 entrances of the temple. Many days were spent in fruitless search. Indeed, one class returned without having made any discovery of importance. The second class were more fortunate, for on the evening of a certain day, after having suffered the greatest privations and personal fatigues, one of the brethren, who had rested himself in a reclining posture to assist his rising, caught hold of a shrub that grew near, which to his surprise came easily out of the ground. On a closer examination he found that the earth had been recently disturbed. He therefore hailed his companions, and with their united endeavors reopened the grave, and there found the body of our master, very indecently interred. They covered it again with all respect and reverence, and to distinguish the spot, stuck a sprig of acacia at the head of the grave. Then hastened to Jerusalem to impart the afflicting intelligence to King Solomon. When the king's first emotions of his grief had subsided, he ordered them to return and raise our master to such a sepulchre as became his rank and exalted talents, at the same time informing them that by his untimely death the secrets of a master mason were lost. He therefore charged them to be particularly careful in observing whatever casual signs, tokens, or words might occur, whilst paying this last sad tribute of respect to departed merit. They performed their task with utmost fidelity, and on reopening the grave, one of the brethren looked around, observed some of his companions in this position. End quote. Looking around, observed some of his companions in this position. End quote. It was then explained to me how the fellow crafts tried to raise Hiram Abiff with the words and grips used in my own figurative raising, and how since that time those elements had been adopted as the designation of all master masons throughout the universe, until time or circumstances should restore the genuine ones. The ceremony then continues. Quote, "The third class, meanwhile, had pursued their researches in the direction of Joppa, and were meditating their return to Jerusalem when, accidentally passing the mouth of a cavern, they heard sounds of deep lamentation and regret. On entering the cave to ascertain the cause, they found 3 men answering the description of those missing, who, on being charged with the murder and finding all chance of escape cut off, made a full confession of their guilt. They were then bound and led to Jerusalem, when King Solomon sentenced them to that death the heinousness of their crime so amply merited. Our Master was then reinterred as near to the sanctum sanctorum as the Israelitish law would permit. There's a grave there in a grave from the center 3 feet east and 3 feet west, 3 feet between north and south, and 5 feet or more perpendicular. He could not be put in the sanctum sanctorum because nothing common or unclean was allowed to enter there, not even the high priest, but once a year, nor then until after many washings and purifications against the great day of expiation for sins, for by the Israelitish law all flesh was deemed unclean. The 15 trusty fellow crafts were ordered to attend the funeral, clothed in white aprons and white gloves as emblems of their innocence." End quote. The ceremony continued in a manner similar to the 2 former degrees, and I emerged a full Master Mason. Some months later, when there was no candidate to progress in the lodge meeting, a past master gave an explanation of the 3rd degree. The 3 villains who murdered Hiram Abief were identified as Jubala, Jubilo, and Jubelum, known jointly as the Jewies, pronounced Jewies. It says pronounced Jewies. The quote, sounds of deep lamentation and regret, end quote, that had been heard coming from the cavern were given in detail. The culprits were heard to be deeply remorseful and wishing terrible punishments upon themselves for their vile actions, and in due course they get their wish. King Solomon had them executed in the manner that each had identified for themselves. They were described in the ritual, but we will not describe them as they comprise part of the means of Masonic identification. The extracts from the 3 levels of Masonic ritual that have been given here will seem extremely strange to those readers who are not on the square, quote unquote, but will be very familiar to fellow Freemasons. Familiarity, however, only serves to make these inexplicable activities seem normal, when by any standards they are bizarre. Some Masons believe the stories to be true, just as many Christians accept the legends of the Old Testament. Others take them as a bit of fun with moral overtones. Very few give any thought at all as to where such strange rituals may have originated. Many of the principal characters are readily identifiable in Judeo-Christian mythology. King Solomon, for example. Boaz, Hakin is how I was pronouncing it, but maybe it's Jacin. I don't know. And some others we have not identified. But the key personality is a complete mystery. Hiram Abief is not mentioned in the Old Testament at all. No builder of the temple is named, and no murder of a high priest is recorded. Some Christian critics of Freemasonry condemn the craft because they claim that it glorifies the resurrection of a man other than Jesus Christ, and that it is essentially a pagan religion. But it is important to note that Hiram Abief, once killed, remained dead. There was no return to life, nor indeed any suggestion of an afterlife existence. There is no supernatural content to Masonic ritual at all, and this is why members of many different religions, including Jews, Christians, Hindus, and Buddhists, have found it complementary to, rather than in conflict with, their own theological beliefs. The central story is very simple and unremarkable, having no special dramatic structure, or even any obvious symbolic value. Yes, Hiram Abief did die rather than betray his beliefs, but so have countless other men and women before and since. If some person or persons set out to invent a story that was to be pivotal to a new society, surely they would have come up with something more remarkable and self-explanatory. It was this thought that provoked us to start digging deeper in a search for the origins of the order. We shared the same frustrations concerning the vague conventional explanation of the origins of the order. Our discussions became more frequent and our interest grew as we sparked off each other, and it was not long before we decided to undertake a structured investigation with the joint objectives of identifying the character we knew as Hiram Abiff and finding the lost secrets of Freemasonry. At that time, neither of us believed that we had any chance of succeeding in this strange quest, but we knew that the journey would be interesting. We did not know it at the time, but we had just set in motion one of the biggest detective investigations of all time, and that our findings were going to be of major importance, not only to Freemasons, but to the world in general. Conclusion of the chapter. There is very little of the Masonic ritual that could be described as ordinary. The candidate is blindfolded, stripped of money and metal objects, dressed as an accused heretic on his journey to the gallows, and finally told that the object of his last degree is how to die. The journey from darkness to light is obviously important, as are the two pillars called Boaz and Jachin, whatever, Jachin, that symbolize strength and establishment, and when united mean stability. Freemasonry claims to be more ancient than the Golden Fleece or Roman Eagle, and has the aim of brotherly love, relief, and truth. Yet investigating the hidden mysteries of nature and science are presented as very important. The genuine secrets of the order, we are told, have been lost, and substituted secrets are in their place until such time as the true ones will be found. The central character of Freemasonry is the builder of King Solomon's temple, who is named Hiram Abiff, who was murdered by 3 of his own men. The stylized death and resurrection of the candidate is the act that makes one a master mason, and when raised from his tomb, the bright morning star is on the horizon. Where could such strange ideas have developed, and why? We could only start our investigation by considering the known theories. And that is the end of that chapter. That takes us into chapter 2. The search begins. Where did the order originate? I am going to stop there for the night. We find a Gandalf for my bookmark. All right. So, let's see who all is around. Vesper is on. So is Hot Dog Raw Dog, Zeus, Mr. Blitzer. I don't remember who I rated last time. I think it was Vesper. So I'm going to go ahead and go on over to Mr. Blitzer. So bear with me a couple of minutes. Give him 5 minutes of your time, if you would, please. And I will take us on over there. I'll see you there.
Feeling shattered skies, watching teary blue eyes, wonder where I might find some peace of mind. Not lights like I had, but more sophisticated into love relations. Disassembling my own heart, 'cause my mind's a million places. I'm giving up. So it's in my head. saved by it.